Well, we're here in New York at the Climate Summit yesterday, and I think many leaders, beginning with the UN Secretary General, made it very clear that the time to act is now. We have only a few years left. Our climate budget is eaten up, if you like. The very clear and strong appeal from Greta Thunberg makes it clear that we need to act now. And we think the green economy, the green growth approach, is really the only way to transition in a safe way for future generations. And in fact, GGGI is a club of countries that are convinced that they should transition to a green growth economy, and we're supporting them in that transition. Decarbonizing the economy is a very large part of it, but it's not only that. It's achieving all the SDGs. We don't only want to mitigate climate change, we'll need to adapt to climate change. We still need jobs for people, green jobs. So in fact, it is a form of economic development that doesn't leave people behind, and that does leave a world behind for future generations. I've been working on sustainable development and green economy are, of course, very closely linked concepts. But while sustainable development was always the idea of the Ministry of the Environment, if you like, and the Ministry of Finance didn't believe in it, we believe that the finance ministers, the ministers of planning, are now much more bought into this whole green economy idea. So whereas before finance ministers would say, yes, sustainable development is nice, but it's too expensive, we have to focus on growing first, they now realize that it needs to be mainstream to have growth that is sustainable. So frankly, convincing people that the green economy is not only necessary, but it's actually feasible and affordable, commercially attractive, that's the biggest challenge. Well, the key thing we do is that we are embedded in government, so we sit inside ministries of finance and planning, and then we work with governments both on their planning, on coming up with NDCs for the Paris Agreement that are more ambitious, which is all the priority for next year, often embedded in a national green growth strategy so that it can be mainstreamed into the country's 5-year plan, the planning side, and then coming up with specific policies to implement that down to nitty-gritties like the feed-in tariff for renewable energy that leads to private investments. And then we help governments come up with projects that can attract green and climate finance, both from concessional finance or development aid and from the private sector. So we really do two things: green policies and planning, and then implementing projects through green and climate finance. Well, we are doing a lot of demonstration projects. We've helped mobilize about $1 billion for green projects, for climate action through green and climate finance. And almost all of those projects are the first projects in a country that shows that solar energy or solar power plus batteries is commercially attractive, is a better alternative than diesel. So not only do we do a project, but then we think that shows a way that will scale up in years to come. So in our own 2030 strategy, we support our member governments to indeed follow the goal, the target set here, to become carbon neutral by 2050. And we target to mobilize about $16 billion in green and climate finance to support projects in our member countries. So my call to action is that the billions will come from aid and from the Green Climate Fund, but the trillions need to come from the pension funds, the institutional investors in the private sector. So we need to make sure that while we mobilize development aid, we use that money to get the private and institutional investors from the sidelines. So the billions from governments, the trillions from the private sector.